I never have enjoyed having to have an uncomfortable conversation with somebody. You know, the kind of conversation I mean, where maybe it's somebody that you're around all the time and they bathe in perfume or aftershave to the point where you to be in the same room with them, or maybe they've got bad breath and their breath would knock a buzzard off a manure wagon, or maybe they've got horrible body odor and not using the right kind of soap and deodorant or enough of it or something. All kinds of conversations that sometimes you just can't avoid having. You have to point it out to them for your own safety, if nothing else. Well, I got to thinking about a uncomfortable conversation I had to have with somebody a few years ago. And looking back on it now, it's kind of comical. At the time, I sure hated having that conversation, probably just as much as they hated hearing me say what I had to say. But I lived in a house that was out in the country, but it was right across the driveway from me. My place had used to been part of their farm years back, and it had been separated off, and there was a driveway that separated the two houses. Well, they would have all kinds of people living over there at their house. They had the kids and the grandkids and the great grandkids and so and Aunt so and oh Lord only knows. I mean, there'd be a couple dozen people at a time living over there in the house, seemed like. Well, I didn't care that they had a lot of people living over there. I mean, that's their business, and they have it however many people over there they wanted to have. But as a result of all them folks living in that house, there tended to be a lot of traffic up and down that driveway. And that driveway was right against my kitchen, and I might be out there cooking or cleaning or doing something. And in my estimation, the kitchen is usually the heart of the home. That's where most of the activity in a house takes place, or at least that's my upbringing. And I'd be out there working around the kitchen. I'd hear a car pull in, and I'd check to see, is that pulling in their driveway or my driveway? What's going on out here? And the issue was that a lot of the people living over there in the house tended to be teenage young men, or maybe even early 20s, young men, comparatively speaking, that I'm an old woman. And they'd have the worst habit I ever seen in my life. They would get out of the car and they would pee in the driveway. I never seen such actions in all my life. I mean, I was raised out in the country, and the fella's got to go. Sometimes he'll step around behind the barn or something, where he's out of sight. But I've never in my life seen people pull in and pee in the driveway. And since it right up against my kitchen, it's summertime, there was no air conditioning in my house. So summertime, you'd have the windows open and everything. And well, they've got a toilet going out there in the driveway. Well, this went on and went on and went on and went on. I mean, I'd seen just about every tallowacker over there at that house. And I had just had enough of this foolishness going on over there. And one day, the older gentleman there that owned the house, he was out fooling around there in the yard one day, and I was sweeping off the deck of my front porch, and he stepped over, say hello to me, and me and him was having a conversation. And I thought, I mean, it's just like that little bubble comes on over top of your head that says, this would be the time. Well, this would be the time that I needed to have a conversation with him. And I said, there is a conversation that you and I need to have. And he says, well, what is it? And I said, well, I really don't like having to get into this, but you need to have a talk with the young men in your household about hygiene. And he looked at me inquisitively, kind of like, what are you talking about? And I said, Currently, they don't know what a bathroom is for. He's looking at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, listen, every time it seemed like one of them pulls in over there, I'll be working around in my kitchen. I'll look out, to see whose driveway somebody's pulling into, and be one of them young men, and he'll jump out of the car and he pees in the driveway. About trying to be subtle about this and just getting a box of urinal cakes and throwing them out in the driveway. But then I thought, no, they probably wouldn't get the point. So I thought I might as well, if I got the opportunity, have this little chat with you and tell you that you might want to speak to the young men about, if they got to do that, pull out behind a barn or stop in town at a place that's got a restroom, or go in the house and use the bathroom, or something like that. But I really don't appreciate them out here taking a whiz in the driveway and stinking up the driveway when it's right up against my house. Now, if I lived, further away, I wouldn't care. You can stink up your place, make it smell like a toilet if that's what turns you all on. But since this involves me, with it being right in my vicinity, I'd really appreciate it if that kind of behavior would stop. He looks at me, and of all the things, he says, well, who's doing it? And I said, well, let's put it this way. I don't believe that there's any males over in your household that I haven't seen doing it, without telling him that I'd seen him doing it too. And he says, well, we'll have to have a talk about this. And I said, well, I really want that stopped. And he turned around and went home. And I have to think back on it, and I wonder if I said, well, I've seen you whip yours out right there in the driveway too, what he would have done. But Lord have mercy. I mean, that beat about all I'd ever had to witness in my old days. One of the worst conversations I ever had to have in my life. But looking back on it, it was a funny conversation.